Rufus. Let's play a vocabulary game. Oh, come on. If you don't know, you can just guess. It's like a multiple choice quiz. Absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. Well, what's the point of anything, Rufus? We're all just gonna die anyway. I mean, who gives a shit? That's the spirit. Okay, here's the game. I'll show you 3 words, and you just tell me the one that doesn't belong. Ready? Great, here we go. Belligerent, belletristic, bellicose. Well, maybe some of the smarter people watching this video can take a stab at it. Now, obviously, if I just ask which word doesn't belong, there's a nearly infinite number of correct answers. You could say that bellicose doesn't belong because it only has 3 syllables while the other words have 4. Or you could say that belletristic doesn't belong because the penultimate syllable has the primary stress, while the other words are stressed on their antepenultimate syllables. Or you could say that belligerent doesn't belong because it has 3 E's in it, while the other words only have 2, and so on. So let's make the criteria unambiguous. 2 of these words are etymologically related. 1 is not related to the other 2. So which one is the odd one out? Take a close look and see if you can figure it out. I'll wait. Have you got it? It's belletristic. Belligerent and bellicose are the etymologically related words, so let's take a look at those 2 first. Blackboard! Now, neither of these words is particularly common, but you're probably more likely to have heard the word belligerent than bellicose, though they both share the same root, the Latin word bellum, which means war. Belligerent comes from the Latin verb belligerare, which means to wage war. When the word first appears in English in the 1500s, it's spelled with an A to reflect its origin in this Latin verb. By the 1700s, though, the spelling changed to the current version with an E, probably as a hypercorrection, assuming that the root was bellum gerere rather than belligerare. So the modern spelling is actually etymologically borked. Anyway, belligerent started off as meaning someone or something literally engaged in war, but the meaning has expanded over the centuries to be figurative as well. Now belligerent is basically a fancy, if rather intense, synonym for hostile. Bellicose is a slightly older word entering English in the 1400s. Its etymology is very straightforward. It just comes from the Latin adjective bellicosus, which means warlike. Bellicose in English means inclined to war or fighting. To distinguish between these 2 words, just remember that belligerent describes a behavior as it's happening, whereas bellicose is a description of a more general tendency. Somebody drunk and punching people at a bar is belligerent, whereas a nation could be described as bellicose, even if it's not currently at war with anyone. So let's look at the odd word out, belletristic. It looks like it might be related to the other 2, but you can see that the root is slightly different, B-E-L-L-E instead of B-E-L-L-I. Belletristic comes from the French phrase belles-lettres, literally fine writing. This is a fairly vague term whose meaning has shifted around over the centuries, but generally it refers to any type of writing that focuses on style and aesthetics, like fiction, poetry, and drama, as opposed to more academic or technical writing. A belletrist is someone who engages in those kinds of aesthetic writings. The adjective belletristic describes writing that serves a primarily aesthetic purpose. Probably nobody, honestly. I just needed to find a way to frame what I actually want to talk about in this video. Oh, I'll tell you, but it's going to require one of our content warnings. Why, here it comes now. Okay, so underlying the words belligerent, bellicose, and belletristic is a little Latin conundrum. Namely this: any first-year Latin student eventually encounters these 2 very common words, the aforementioned noun bellum and the adjective bellus, which means pretty, handsome, beautiful, fine, etc. The bell in belletristic comes from this word, not from bellum. Now obviously, these 2 words are very easy to confuse. In fact, the word bellum without context could either mean war as the noun or a beautiful thing as the adjective being used substantively. In fact, if you wanted to say war is a beautiful thing in Latin, you could say bellum est bellum. Why is there this perverse similarity between 2 words that shouldn't look alike? They were a bellicose people, for sure. I mean, empires don't spread themselves, you know. It's very tempting to construct a story about the Romans' love of war seeping into their language and making beautiful and war look strikingly similar. We humans love to tell stories, after all, even though it gets us into a lot of trouble, epistemologically speaking. It's fun to connect the dots about the Romans calling war a beautiful thing, but the truth is that the word for war in Latin changed over time, making it to look like bellus. By the time of the 1st century CE, when Rome was the imperial juggernaut we all learn about in history class, the Latin language had already been changing for centuries. The archaic form of the word for war, which you can still read in pre-classical authors like Plautus, was duellum. You should immediately recognize this as the origin of the word duel, which refers specifically to a fight between two people. The archaic Latin word has this root. Duo means two. Over time, duellum became bellum. A similar thing happened to the classical Latin adverb bis, which means twice. In archaic Latin, the form was duis. You may have wondered why we have two prefixes in English, bi and die, that both mean two. Well, now you know. We only have the bi root because of this change from archaic to classical Latin, the same one that produced bellum from duellum. So, Latin students, go impress your magister or magistra next time you see bellus and bellum causing problems in translation. Why don't you pipe down before I come over there and cram your talking sign up your face? Hey, you learned a word. Absolutely nothing. See you next time.